So good afternoon or good morning or whatever is the time in the space where you listen this to. My name is Yevhenii Osiievskyi, and I'm going to make a presentation about the uses of Cycads in Vanuatu. So I'm going to fill in that space on the uses of Cycads in Oceania, just with one important caveat. It's not about how they are ingested, how they are consumed, but more about their ritual uses and the ways in which they feature in rituals and in social life even up to this day. And just a few brief points to fill you in on the cultural context of Vanuatu. So the first thing, it's an archipelago country, and it's each island and sometimes many communities within the island have their own culture. And they are so diverse to the point when prior to colonization, prior to it is almost impossible to talk about the unified culture of the to extent throughout all the archipelago group. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to present a review of the ethnographic material, and I'm going to indicate where exactly the certain practice was reported, and usually I will most heavily rely on ethnographies from 3 islands in the central section of the archipelago. And okay, yeah. So super fast. Vanuatu is an island country, and it's very culturally diverse, and that's why I'm going to reference specific islands where certain practices were reported from. And the Cycads in one of the languages that is used throughout the archipelago, they are called namele. And so there are 3 main uses of namele, which I'm going to concentrate on. These are not by no means all the uses. So the first one is the use of them as ritual grade and place marker. The second is the use of them as a symbol of peace and reconciliation. And the third one is the use of Cycads as a stand-in for chiefly or customary authority. So to begin with, one of the distinguishing features of the pre-contact cultures of the archipelago were so-called grade taking or grade alteration ceremonies. And they consisted of ritual procedures predominantly limited to the male part of the population, in the course of which a person was able to purchase a ritual status through public sacrifice of pigs, distribution of foodstuffs among relatives, and the organization of large-scale feasts. And the general Bislama term for the ceremonies of this kind is nimangi. And in the islands of Malekula and Pentecost, Cycad leaves featured prominently in various nimangi complexes. Often the sacrificial pigs were tied to Cycads posts. On the photograph that I managed to procure, these are obviously not Cycads, but in many complexes, this poles you see in front of you on the photograph would have been made out of Cycads. Or alternatively, in some regions, various plants were used as symbols of a certain ritual rank. So, and the Cycads were among the most frequently used of those plants, and they were pretty high up in the hierarchy, because you started from something like a croton, and then you erythrina, and sometimes you raised to Cycads, and in other islands there were even. Then there were stone monoliths, so the top level is stone monoliths. And then in the Pentecost context, Cycads also played an important role in the practices of owning and remembering the place through the system of sacred sites known as Vatun Vanua in the local Raga language. And so this Vatun Vanua, they were parcels of land that were allocated to a certain clan, and they were usually marked by planting of Cycads. This was one of the ways in which it was performed. And the way to claim ownership of this parcel of land was to recreate, to retell the myths connected with it, because it was believed that cultural heroes or ancestors or important ancestors were buried there, and so we see the Cycads included in the system of land ownership and land and the passage of land rights from one community and one clan to another. So going into the second avenue, the second general way in which Cycads were used and are used actually in Vanuatu. So they are often used as a marker of peace negotiations, of restoring of disturbed relationship. And this function can be presently observed throughout the archipelago in some of the reconciliation procedures of the local custom courts. Well, such institutions, they exist with parallel of the official legal system, and they are presided by local chiefs or elders. And in custom courts, the peacemaking ceremonies between the aggrieved parties often incorporate exchange of customary gifts, and the leaves of Cycads, they are one of those gifts, one of those tokens that are exchanged between the aggrieved parties in order to restore the unsettled relationship. And even more importantly, and perhaps more paradoxically, one of the most striking cases in which this symbolics, this peacemaking symbolics of Cycads is manifested is through one curious ritual reported by Layard from the small islands of Malekula. You can see them, this accumulation of little small dots in the upper part of the screen. So the people there, they had a very strict understanding, very symmetrical understanding of lex talionis. So when the two parties, the two clans, they had a clash, they had a battle, and one clan attained an advantage. So more people died in the one clan than in the other. Then the winners, they felt the need to provide the losers with an opportunity to restore this balance. So what they do, they would send a person from their own, one of their own people. They would tie him and send them to their opponents with the mutual understanding that this person should be sacrificed and ritually eaten. And one of the tokens that symbolized that this is actually an offering of peace, an offering of a proposition of peacemaking, was to send this person with an amela leaf, with a cycad leaf, as a message. And finally, the third practice, I will try to make it extremely brief, in which cycads are still used and still present in Vanuatu even today, is as an emblem of chiefly authority per se and as indicator of tabu. So the practice of tabu is reported from far back, even from the colonial age. What it consisted of, a person, historically it could have been any kind of person, but now it's mostly chiefs, was able to impose a prohibition on, for example, on the usage of a certain area or on certain kind of activity like coconut eating or dancing. And the means to do this, the traditional means to do this, was to place a cycad leaf. For instance, if the coral reef was under prohibition, it was prohibited to fish there. The chief could have placed a cycad leaf. You see, not on all photographs I present here, not all of them are cycads. The central one is not, but usually, most often, these were cycads, and it was known that the territory is prohibited. It is off the limit. And finally, so these are more traditional ways, although they are still present in modern Vanuatu. But the symbolics of Cycads is so powerful and so multivalent that it was also recruited by so quote-unquote modern institutions. So both the secessionist movement that existed in the islands in the 70s and 80s, Nagriamel movement, used Cycads as one of its symbols. And they also incorporated the word for Cycads in their title. And even the present day, the flag of the Republic of Vanuatu, which you right now see in front of you, it also has two cycad leaves. You see there in the black portion of the flag, so they are crossed with each other. Yeah, thank you for your attention.